Welcome back to the IBFP. Here's your host, Boxing New.
Wow, Canelo Alvarez versus Jermall Charlo must happen in 2021. Look, let's just break it down. According to BoxingInsider.com, the trainer of Canelo Alvarez, Eddy Reynoso, states that a fight between Canelo and Jermall Charlo, that fight has to take place next year in 2021. His exact quotes were, it would be a big, important fight, but that fight has to take place next year in 2021. He also states, I don't think we can make 160 pounds right now after a year without fighting. These are factors that can be complicated. Now you see that Canelo Alvarez states that he'll fight between 160 and 168. His next fight after the legal issues are resolved is going to be at 168 pounds, likely against a world champion. Canelo Alvarez most recently fought at 175 pounds against Sergey Kovalev. It would be disastrous to expect any fighter to drop 2 weight classes back down to 160. That simply doesn't make sense. What does make sense is Canelo Alvarez to have his next fight at 168 and then potentially face Jermall Charlo at 160, or have Jermall Charlo move up to 168, as he's a naturally bigger man than Canelo Alvarez himself, fighting in a lower weight class. So if we look at the situation, I think a lot of things are people are wondering about the weights, what's going to happen, who's ducking. So I'm going to answer all of those questions. When you look at it, Ronnie Shields, Jermall Charlo's trainer, came out and said that they're willing to fight Canelo Alvarez as high as 168 and even 175, wherever Canelo Alvarez wants, because like I said, Jermall Charlo is the bigger man. Jermall Charlo is draining himself down to 168 to face smaller competition. So it's obvious that Jermall Charlo would have no problem making weights like 168, 175, and so on. But he is a world champion at 160, so that would make more sense to have the fight there. We got to be honest about it. But we see that Jermall Charlo has no problem facing Canelo Alvarez at any weight class he desires, because he understands that Canelo Alvarez ultimately is the A side in any negotiation. The fact that Canelo Alvarez is the face of boxing. Not only that, you've already seen a lot of people make accusations stating that Canelo Alvarez ducked his mandatory, so this fight should be happening. Well, here's the issue, is that Canelo Alvarez was never mandated to fight Jermall Charlo, so that was an outrageous and bogus lie. Anytime you mention Canelo and Jermall Charlo, people will come with this lie saying that, he ducked his mandatory for the franchise belt, which makes no sense because they were never mandated to fight. How can you duck somebody that you were never mandated to fight? And Jermall Charlo was never frustrated by that, by his own admission. We got to be honest. We bring facts and not feelings. But not only that, about the whole topic of Canelo ducking Jermall Charlo is the other way around. You see, Jermall Charlo is the one who ducked Canelo Alvarez. Even Oscar De La exposed, Jermall Charlo, basically stating that him and his team rejected a lucrative offer to face Canelo Alvarez in 2019. He had an opportunity. He had an option. This is a guy in Jermall Charlo that couldn't even sell a wing dinner, but he wanted to turn around and reject a career-high payday from Canelo Alvarez. He simply didn't want the smoke, and fanboys are full of it. And look, let's just be real. We know Canelo Alvarez badly wants that fight, because him and his trainer and his whole camp believes that's an easy fight for Canelo Alvarez, as do I. I mean, look at Eddy Reynoso's statements as of early of 2020, stating that Canelo Alvarez versus Jermall Charlo, that's easy work for Canelo Alvarez. Easy work. And look, we know that stylistically Jermall Charlo is a basic, straight up and down fighter who only has a jab against smaller opponents. He's nothing more, nothing special, nothing elite. So we got to be real about who Jermall Charlo is. We're not going to lie about the guy. I mean, this is the same guy that was hurt to the body against Sergey Derevyanchenko in the 8th round. And he's tailor-made for a guy like Canelo Alvarez. We got to be real. And look, a lot of people are going to say, well, Canelo Alvarez ducked Sergey Derevyanchenko. That's another myth and lie that people like to associate with Canelo Alvarez when it comes to a guy that him and Jermall Charlo both were wanting to fight. But at the end of the day, you see here that Sergey Derevyanchenko took a guaranteed $4 million, but at the same time, his overall purse was $5.2 million to face Gennady Golovkin. But when he was offered to fight with Canelo Alvarez, he was offered $5.5 million, over $300,000 more, and he took less to face Gennady Golovkin, effectively ducking Canelo Alvarez. And not only that, he was demanding $7 million from Canelo, but was willing to take $5.2 million to face Golovkin. And even though he was guaranteed $5.5 against Canelo, he still took less to face Gennady Golovkin. We got to be honest about Sergey Derevyanchenko never wanting to smoke with Canelo Alvarez and ducking him twice. On the second occasion he ducked Canelo Alvarez is when he was offered a fight with Canelo and Jermall Charlo, and he still picked Jermall Charlo. He would obviously want to pick anybody other than Canelo Alvarez because he know he would get stopped for the first time in his career. We all know that because stylistically Canelo Alvarez is all wrong for a guy like Sergey Derevyanchenko. But look, let's just break it down. There is a reason why Jermall Charlo ducked Canelo Alvarez. There's a reason why Sergey Derevyanchenko ducked Canelo Alvarez twice. Canelo Alvarez is all wrong for Jermall Charlo. We've seen him hurt to the body in the 8th round against Sergey. We've seen him struggle against Matt Korobov, and we've seen him go 12 with the cherry pick and Brandon Adams. Canelo Alvarez defense, counterpunching, and ring IQ would be too much for Jermall Charlo, who is also weak to the body. There's a reason why Canelo Alvarez is #1 pound for pound, and that's facts, never feelings.